HOA story time. Try to sneak a foreclosure, lose my business and everyone else's. For anyone who's ever served on an HOA board, you know that most of the violations, accounting, and general management of an HOA, especially with a neighborhood of the size I run, is handled by a property management company. This is mainly because it would be too expensive and biased to have someone who lives in the community handle all of these duties alone. A dirty little secret of these companies, however, that many of these companies will make their prices cheaper by secretly passing fining policies onto the homeowners that the board has no control over. Hence today's story. So about a month ago, we were conducting a regular HOA meeting. We have been having them fairly often to keep our board, management company rep, and homeowners in sync since I've been hearing complaints of bad behavior from the management company. This particular meeting, however, things almost got out of control. As soon as we finished all of our checklist items, we asked homeowners about any questions. A couple stood up, and I saw the man holding a paper with a shaking hand, which I quickly learned was due to his anger. Over the next 10 minutes, he explained how he was here to plead his case for the board not to foreclose on his house, especially since he had been making payments on a large debt for a very long time. Without going into too many details, the discussion got extremely heated because our management company had told us not to get involved since this homeowner had already been involved with our lawyers. After lots of arguing, the meeting was finally over. I left totally confused because I knew that the homeowner was in good standing, and if he was willing to pay, which the record showed he had called to do so, why couldn't he? I had been told by my property manager to not take any action, and I decided to call BS. I called the legal firm representing the board, which I was told not to do, even though they represent us, and after talking with the firm for an hour, I found out that the management company had not allowed this homeowner to pay his fines and dues because of a petty procedural technicality, and that, instead, they were slapping fines on him like there was no tomorrow. I quickly told the lawyer to offer to settle his balance with no fines, and the issue was resolved the next day. Revenge. I spent more time looking into our management company and found out that they would underbid management contract costs and supplement them by adding in their own fines onto the homeowner collections without the board's approval. This is a technicality in the fining process, and while it's not illegal, it is highly unethical and disputable because it encourages the management company to fine and escalate non-issues since, well, to make more money. I honestly felt horrendous because I had no idea, because it's a one-line clause in the contract. I also received a call from our community manager urging us to stop waiving fines since it sets a bad example. That really sent me over the edge. Livid with this phone call and new knowledge about fines, I found a new management company and terminated our contract immediately. In addition, I believe I found a loophole where all of the charges unfairly pressed against homeowners will not be recouped by the company, and the HOA cannot be liable for them since they are pass-through. During the issue with the property investment company, I met about a dozen other HOA board members in my area and discovered about 6 of them are using the same company and even community manager. I urged them to look into the same issues, and they soon discovered the horrors for themselves. It sounds like all of them will be terminating their contracts too. One of the other association presidents actually knows state council for HOA rules, and they are now working with them to make this practice illegal. If it passes, this entire company would go under. While I'm not holding my breath, I am certainly following the legal proceedings closely and have even offered to testify before a committee why this rule is needed. It sounds like deliberations begin in January. As for the community manager, the person helping our community, they have lost over half of their contracts, and their manager came begging for me to stay. They even offered to stop the fining policy in the most corporate talk way possible, while they basically gave themselves plausible deniability if they do it again. I told him that his property manager deserved what she had coming to her, and that their policies were stone cold terrible. He tried to reply, but I just hung up. I was too angry. Watch these management companies closely. They are almost all seriously snakes in the grass, waiting to screw over board members and community members. Do you agree with this? I'm suspecting the community manager is getting a cut of the fines. Would be a good idea to check on any other fines issued. Yeah, there might be some under-the-table nastiness going on here. What would you do? Selling my previous house, demand I bear all the repair and upgrade costs, posted by Snoo Seagulls 4821. Some background story. The previous house was owned by my parents, around 850 feet. They bought it in 2003, and it was previously owned by another owner. My parents spent almost $5,000 for the repair and upgrade of the house. We replaced the floor marble, we repainted the walls, upgraded and repaired the bathrooms, we checked the pipes, we even replaced the main door to a French door style and also upgraded the kitchen. Anyway, back to the story. Recently, my parent bought a new house because they want to be near to their friends and relatives. Because of that, they're selling the previous house and planning to use the money for upgrading the new house. They hired a real estate agent to help with the process and contractors to check if there are any damages or things that need to be repaired or replaced. Last month, a buyer was interested in buying because of the location. It was near her boyfriend's house. She came a few times to inspect the house and even hired a lawyer to be a witness. My parent didn't mind and tried their best to assist. After a week, she was satisfied and agreed to buy the house and went to the bank to get the loan. That's where the problem starts. Let's call her K and the lawyer L. K recently demanded some furniture of the house to be given to her. The furniture she requested is the air conditioning, the fans, television, the closet. Now she insisted because it's made out of wood and marble, and the bed frame for 3 of the bedrooms. She even asked the lawyer to write that down in the contract and stated that my parent willingly gave it to her. My parent doesn't want any confrontation, just agreed except the bed frame and the closet. When she found out, she got more and more demanding, asking for a discount, more furniture, and even asked my parent to pay for the maintenance fee until she moves in, including when she repairs the house. My parent must continue to pay the maintenance fees. My parent's fed up with her and won't sell the house if she keeps up with more demand, and then she quiets down. After the bank loan was approved, the following week she applied for the loan and the money is in. My parents moved out and gave her the keys, so they're temporarily staying with me. This wasn't the end of the story. Last week, she contacted us and demanded my parents pay for the repair cost and upgrade of the house. Like what? My parents couldn't keep up with her, so they asked me to handle her. This is the following conversation. "Where are your parents?" she said. "I need to speak with them about the housing repair." I said, "Miss, did you think you're buying a brand new house? Why would they pay for anything that's under your own?" They lied to me. There are a few damages on the walls, so they must repair and upgrade my house for the inconvenience that they caused. Am I dreaming? Miss, when the contract is signed and the ownership is already transferred, the house and repair and the upgrade is no longer my parents' business. If they don't do what I ask, I'll sue you. Have a good day, miss. After I close the call, she keeps bombarding with messages and threatening to get a lawyer. I actually contacted the lawyer that she hired when my dad became friends with the lawyer, and the lawyer told me that she actually insisted him to add in the extra condition in the contract without my parents' knowledge that they must bear the cost for anything up to 3 years. What? Anyway, now I'm just waiting for the lawyer letter, I guess. An update. Did my parents read the contract? Yes. They even asked the lawyer to read out and explain the terms and conditions in the contract before signing it. The contract is now in the safe. About the altercation of the contract. After signing the contract, the lawyers have to go to the government office to update the new ownership of the house with the original contract as proof. She contacted the lawyer to ask him to edit more terms in the contract after my parents signed the contract. He flat out refused because, first, that is illegal, he will lose his license and he'll get sued by my parents and will face criminal charges. When she found out that he will not bend, she is looking for other lawyers that are willing to do it. Anyway, back to the story and update. The real estate agent, which is my dad's old friend, visits my parents and told them that she keeps harassing him in his office about the issue and wants to sue them. She even demands that they compensate for the repair costs for things that my parents didn't know about. Her boyfriend even went to their office and created a scene there. My dad felt so guilty about this matter and couldn't sleep since her harassment started. I couldn't do anything because, by law, she doesn't have proof and there will be no case. The lawyer told my dad and the agent if she did find a lawyer and the letter of demand came, the lawyer asked to be their representative because he is there since the beginning. My dad is now debating about this issue. Overbearing neighbor, posted by Logical Pineapple 624. How do I deal with a neighbor who just trauma dumps and wants to be more than just neighbors? Context: I have lived in my neighborhood for a short amount of time, 3 years to be exact, and as a first-time homeowner, I am extremely cautious about the noise that we make. We recently had a patio installed which caused quite a bit of noise from the contractors. On the final day of the contractors being there, they arrived early, 7:15 a.m., and started grinding rebar, which is quite noisy. I felt terrible for the early wake-up call to all of my neighbors, and I decided to write them a handwritten apology card with a Starbucks gift card as an olive branch. One of my neighbors just moved in, and we haven't introduced ourselves yet, so we took the opportunity to welcome them to the neighborhood in the card, and we gave them our phone numbers in case they needed anything. After delivering each of the cards to their doors, I received a text about an hour later from the new neighbor where she thanked me for the note and the gift card and asked if we could meet each other sometime. I agreed, and we made plans to see each other the next day. Leading up to the meetup, she was texting me constantly, and to maintain a good relationship, I responded in a timely manner. She started to lightly trauma dump, trigger warning, D-violence, about abusive relationships in the past and other items that felt odd to share before even meeting in person or with someone that you barely know. I was sympathetic as I didn't know what to do. Once our meetup happened, she went into much greater detail about her abusive relationships, her vices, and other traumatic events in her life. I was shocked, but I kept my composure and was again sympathetic. She also told me that she was a therapist for families and individuals who struggle with mental health. After the first meetup, she increased how often she was texting me and even stated, "We are the same person and I am going to make you be in my wedding." Mind you, I've known her for a total of 36 hours at this point, the first text to when the text was delivered. Now she texts me every day, multiple times a day, and I've been trying to distance myself a little because, well, 1, it was a lot to process, and 2, because I am caring from 3 other dependents while working full-time, and also, I'm more of a low-maintenance friend to my friends and family, where constant communication, it's not part of my norm. She has noticed me pull back a little and not text back the moment she texts me. She mentioned, hoping she didn't scare me off, multiple times, where I had to tell her, "No, but I'm quite busy, so it's difficult to text, and I like to unwind and unplug after work," hoping that would give a hint that I don't want to text as often or, well, if really at all. Well, that hasn't worked. She has now escalated to asking to borrow items such as a ladder, which of course I let her borrow as she's a first-time homebuyer and probably doesn't have a lot of home tools that she'll need to settle in. My husband and I brought it over and I met her fiance for the first time. The encounter was quite awkward and she stared at me the entire time. They didn't invite us in, which was a relief after the initial encounter, and we walked back home. Within 20 seconds of leaving her driveway, I received 3 texts gushing about me and saying that we should all hang out more. And within 4 minutes, she was in our driveway returning the item. Did she actually need it, or was it just an excuse to see me? I didn't respond for a while, and then she began asking again if she scared us off. She also began asking who my primary care provider, my dentist, and my OBGYN was. Also, every time I go into my backyard, she goes into her backyard. She never says hi, but it's now happening more often that it isn't a coincidence. I am in a bind because I have had bad experiences with overbearing friends in the past who have intentionally tried to ruin aspects of our lives, so I am overly cautious now with the people that I engage with, especially neighbors. I am also violating an HOA rule with having one too many animals at my home. So if she wanted to get back at me, she could by reporting me, so I want to keep myself in somewhat of good graces with all the neighbors. Should I be concerned, or am I being overly cautious? How should I proceed? Given the phone number was the first mistake that opened the Pandora's box can of worms, maybe just back off little bit by little bit and just gray rock, as they say, and don't give her any attention. I hope this gets better, OP. Keep telling me to cut your tree down? Good luck cleaning it up. Posted by Silver Scallion 1127. My neighbors have a fairly big tree and have branches hanging over our yard. I know I can't really say anything about it, so I annoyingly collect dead leaves and branches that often fall into my yard. So I had enough, and I bought a pole saw and sawed off a few until my neighbors excitingly ran up to me and said I can saw the whole tree off so it won't ever grow back. I blankly looked at him, hoping that he would at least offer money or something, but I basically said that I'm only sawing off what's on my side of the property. He kept trying to convince me that I would never have to worry about branches if I cut off his whole tree. I kept saying no. He shut up for maybe an hour and then offered me a few skewers that he happened to barbecue. This was literally our first time interacting, so it was pretty insulting how much he's sucking up. I declined his food and he got a bit hissy. I saw that there was a lot more branches left for me to saw off, so I thought even more. It actually might be a great idea to saw their whole 20-foot tree. So I gladly went up to the neighbor and then I said, "You know what? I thought about what you said. I think it's better off I cut down the tree so I don't have to deal with it." Even while taking the skewer he offered me earlier. His smile became bright again as I walked myself around the fence and went to town. Tree timbered down, and I went to the neighbor and said, "All right, glad to help. Have to go back to my yard to clean up." He became hesitant and said, "When can you clean my yard up?" "Clean your yard? You only told me to cut down your tree. This isn't my yard. I'm not cleaning this up." He instantly got so red, and I could tell it's taking him a long while for him to process what now that he has to deal with. I took my saw back and even told him it's a rental and I have to return it soon. I decided to make this post because this past year it was left in his yard and wasn't touched. He just hired someone to simply get rid of it. Hasn't spoken to me since and had to say his skewer tasted really good. That's some great malicious compliance, OP. You just did what the man said and he had to deal with the fallout, literal tree fallout and consequences. Neighbor threatened my family. Next step? Posted by GuitarBoy33. Neighbor moved next door in my formerly quiet cul-de-sac a year ago. Their once nice house is now a yard full of trash, and they park their cars in front of my house. They block my driveway. They drag their trash cans all the way over to in front of my house. They put their trash in my cans, and so on. I go out at least once a day and throw trash and other items back into their yard from mine. I've missed multiple days of mail because they park in front of my mailbox. So today, their trash was back over in front of my house, blocking my mailbox, and I dragged it back to in front of their own home. The very large father and neighbor came over and banged on our door. My adult daughter answered, and he shouted that he was going to beat her freaking butt. Her husband, my son-in-law, came out and was also threatened. He told us never to touch his cans again, and he can put them anywhere he wants in the cul-de-sac because it's public property. So I heard about this maybe 15 minutes later and went next door and asked if he threatened my daughter. He said he did and then proceeded to threaten to kick my butt. So I called the police. They came out and basically took a quick report and they left without arresting him or doing anything. They basically told me that I can file a protective order if I want and that I should just stay out of his way. I have a 10-year-old granddaughter and a 1-year-old grandson living with me. I can't just allow this threat to my family. So the officer didn't even give me his name so I can file a protective order. What are my next steps? Just wait for the police report to be ready and to get his info from there and file a report? Get a gun? I feel like my family could be harmed every time they come and go from the house. I was very disappointed the police didn't seem to care or want to help. Comments are suggesting cameras and then to call the police station and ask for a copy of the report and it might have his name on it. Good idea. Overreacting, posted by Patient Leopard 2704. We moved into our house about 16 months ago. 3 months after we moved in, we had our first baby. Our neighbor's property is very close to our son's nursery and they have a pool. We quickly learned in the summer that they had frequent parties with grandkids, lots of screaming and so on, which we could live with. All was fine until about 2 months later, they bought an enormous RV that sits directly next to our property line. When they have it extended, it's literally in our front yard. So much so that we can't cut the grass unless they put the extension in, and even then it's still a challenge. When they bought it, they immediately came over to apologize and stated it wouldn't be extended unless their grandchildren were over. He also said that he would take care of the grass. Neither turned out to be true. It was always extended and he frequently would wait weeks to take care of the lawn. We had a brand new baby, so it really wasn't a priority of ours. Fast forward to this year. All was fine until RV shows up last month. Same song and dance as last year. Have to ask him to move the extension to cut our lawn. Frequent and late pool parties with kids screaming. Now that our son is 1, noise is more of a concern, especially at 9 and 10 o'clock at night. Additionally, he was doing work on his shed and left a bunch of debris in our yard that we cleaned up. Guests always park in front of our house, and when we take walks, they obstruct their driveway so that we have to go on the street. Last night, they had another party, and when we got home, there were a total of 12 cars on the street. They were all in front of our house, and we couldn't even back into our driveway. The RV extended into our yard. It was excessive. The cars were only in front of our house, not the opposite neighbor. While they have told us before, we are good neighbors, and we try to be quiet for your baby, it just seems inconsiderate. Especially having to ask your neighbor to move their crap so you can mow your own lawn. A crazy Karen followed me home, posted by Volpix2317. For some context, I was a 22-year-old female, though I do have a baby face and could pass for 16 or 17 years old easy. I had a Yamaha motorbike, 125 cc's, meaning it could easily go 70 miles per hour. My dad raced motocross, and I've been riding bikes my whole life. He taught me all the road rules and the safety do's and don'ts. So one day, I'm riding to visit my uncle who lived in the middle of nowhere, and the roads there are all 50 miles per hour, and they have extreme bends, and on each side of the road is a massive ditch. I'm going 55 miles per hour, only slowing when the bends are bad. Cue a Karen with 3 kids, all under 10, in the back tailing me. And I mean tailing, within a couple of feet to the back of my bike. So I speed up to ignore her, and then she pulls her minivan to the side of me and tries to force me to the edge of the road, which is just a ditch. I slow and I let her pass, my heart racing as I barely kept my bike upright. You'd think this is where it ends, right? No. I was maybe a few miles from my uncle's at this point, and I have to go through a village high street to get there. As I'm going through, I see Karen, and her minivan is blocking the street, and she stood with her door open in the road, her arms out as she tries to stop me and force me off of the road. I just managed to get past her as onlookers were yelling at her to stop. I go to the last few streets to my uncle's and stop down the road, parking my bike and taking my helmet off. With a screech, Karen's minivan pulls up in front of me and she runs for me screaming. What the heck is wrong with you? Don't you know how to drive? When I just stare at her, she screeches again. Only cars can drive in the road, bikes have to drive on the side or on the pavement. Yeah, no, that's so wrong. That thing can't go fast enough to be in the road. You should have pulled over when I told you to. I'm gonna report you. At this point, I see my uncle coming outside, his eyes shifting between the Karen and me. Now, something to know about my uncle and me is that we are crazy close. We're both pranksters too. Also, my uncle is 6 foot and not a small man. So without skipping a beat, I put on a fake sad face and run to him screaming in a terrified voice. "Daddy, this lady tried to grab me off of my bike and followed me home." Where I live, you can get a provisional license before 18, meaning that I could have been a minor. Trying not to laugh, my uncle puffs up his chest and yells out at the woman who had run after me and is now behind us. "You followed my little girl home. She's a child." Karen's face went white, and I swear she looked like she had crapped herself as she tried to defend herself, only for my uncle to interrupt her. As loud as he could, making sure every nosy neighbor had come out, he screams, "What are you, some kind of perv? I'm calling the police." Without blinking, Karen runs for her car, speeding off with 3 confused-looking kids in the back. As soon as Karen was out of view, I told my uncle what happened, and we both laughed as we went inside to see my aunt laughing as she had watched the whole thing through the window. Update. Okay, so just for clarification, I didn't have a camera as this was years ago when they cost a lot more than they do now. And yes, I could have pulled over and called the police, but I was on my bike and my phone in my backpack, so I would have had to stop, get my bag off, and grab it. And if you've used bike gloves, you know it's not possible to use a phone with them. I had no intention of stopping, spending all that time and giving her the opportunity to run for me. As for the police afterwards, I was just happy she had screwed off. "Weird neighbor aggressively stomping above me in the middle of the night," posted by Shade Coldfang. So I just had the weirdest thing happen to me. I live in an old building made in the 1800s, and so the flooring and the walls, they're all weird, and on some parts more than just thick, and on some parts like paper thin. So anyways, my window was open in the middle of the night, and I was about to go to bed, cause it's summer and it's hot, so I was just letting some fresh night air in. My window in my bedroom goes into my backyard, but there is also a way that people used to exit the property. When I was laying down in bed, my female neighbor upstairs stood next to my open window and just said quietly, "Hello," into my room from the outside. Weirded out by this, I just made a grunting and cough noise to make myself known that I am in here. She left my window, and about a minute later, out of frickin' nowhere, she started getting mental upstairs and started banging on the walls, jumping like a maniac and stomping hard on the floor at 11 p.m. in the night out of nowhere. I was starting to get mad because I wanted to sleep. And then it wouldn't stop. I tossed over a jacket and walked outside. Her windows were open and I was staring up into the windows, waiting for her to make more noise so I have a reason to yell up there and threaten with the cops, because this was way over the top what she did, and it's against the building rules made by our landlord to make this much noise beyond 9 p.m. So as I was standing there in the dark backyard, it got suddenly very quiet in her home. So I was getting back into my apartment, still like, what the heck just happened? Why did she go outside into the backyard, quietly say hello into my open window, just to go away and get mental above me? Sometimes I just wish I could see into people's heads to know why they do this. This comment says mental illness, and OP replies, might be, but I can't say for sure. She was always fairly quiet, no loud noises or anything strange like what had just happened. Of course, sometimes some bumping and stomping happens through the day, but not as loud and not as aggressive, like just walking or running or dropping some stuff or cleaning. All in all, what just happened is truly strange, and I am living here in my apartment for 8+ years, and stuff like this has never happened before. Sued the HOA president. He keeps finding me, so I ruin his HOA. Click the video on your screen so you get this awesome story, and I'll see you there.